You spend your whole life trying for her, working, bringing money home, fulfilling her every whim. And then one day, you accidentally come home early and hear her laughing with her friends, calling you her personal ATM and a doormat on call. Everything you believed in shatters in a second. But instead of losing control, you decide to play by her rules, so that later you can take everything from her. The house, the money, the friends, even her pride. This isn't just revenge. It's a masterfully planned game of destruction. Hello, my friend. I'm so glad you stopped by my channel. If it's your first time here, don't forget to subscribe and like this video, as every like truly inspires me. Please tell me which city and country you watched this video from. Now, let's get started. That afternoon, I managed to clock out earlier than usual. No pressing deadlines, no urgent calls, just a quiet decision to head straight home. I thought it might be a nice change, a chance to surprise my wife, share a meal, maybe even enjoy an evening together for once. The moment I stepped inside, laughter rang through the house, boisterous, unfiltered, echoing from the living room. I paused just beyond view, curiosity keeping me still. Then, amidst the mirth, I heard her voice. "Ladies, let me introduce you to my very own personal ATM." More laughter erupted, unchecked and mocking. My breath hitched, my grip tightening around my keys. He caters to my every need, never questions a dime I spend, and wouldn't dare complain even if I bled him dry. Honestly, I could tell him to scrub the floors on his hands and knees, and he'd probably ask if I wanted anything else when he was done. The laughter swelled again, a cruel chorus of amusement. I remained frozen, torn between stepping in and staying put. But I needed to hear more. "Think I'm exaggerating?" she continued, a teasing edge in her tone. "Just last week, I casually mentioned how relaxing a weekend at that 5-star spa retreat would be. Didn't even ask outright, just floated the idea over dinner. And what do you know? By morning, the reservation was made. He's so easy to manipulate, I don't even have to try." She spoke with a casual arrogance, delighting in her own cunning. Her friends chimed in, one of them sighing, "You're so lucky. I wish my husband was that easy to control." "Luck?" My wife scoffed. "It's not luck. It's about knowing how to pull the strings, make them feel guilty, play sweet when necessary, maybe shed a few tears now and then. Works like a charm." Glasses clinked together, likely in a toast to her expertise in deception. I leaned against the wall, staring at the floor as the weight of her words settled in. Every thoughtful gesture, every sacrifice, every effort I had made to ensure her happiness, it had all been a joke to her. And worse, she had an audience that knew exactly how she saw me. I wasn't a husband in their eyes. I was a paycheck, a puppet. Something shifted inside me. I wouldn't barge in. I wouldn't give them the satisfaction of a reaction. Instead, I turned on my heel and walked right back out. Sitting in my car, I gripped the steering wheel, my mind racing. Every moment I had devoted to her, every compromise I had made, it had all been for nothing. But now, I had a choice. Not one driven by anger or heartbreak, but a real, deliberate decision that would change everything. One thing was clear. I was done being her fool. I didn't return that night. Instead, I drove aimlessly, letting the reality of it all sink in. Confronting her in some dramatic showdown would be useless. She didn't respect me. She never had. If I wanted out, I had to be smart. I checked into a budget motel, sat on the edge of the bed, and pulled out my phone. No more emotions. Those didn't matter anymore. What I needed was a plan. First, I had to gather proof. I couldn't afford to leave myself defenseless. I started recording everything, every insult, every moment of manipulation, every time she treated me like an accessory rather than a partner. I had never thought to document it before, but now, every incriminating remark was safely stored. Next, I sought legal advice. Not just any lawyer. I needed someone specialized in divorce and financial protection. I spent hours combing through reviews, checking credentials. By dawn, I had an appointment scheduled. She wouldn't see it coming. Then came the finances. Logging into our accounts, I combed through the transactions. The evidence was glaring: reckless spending, unnecessary luxuries, indulgences funded entirely by me. And I had let it happen. But not anymore. I opened a separate account in my name alone, discreetly transferring small amounts, nothing that would raise immediate suspicion. I also started canceling our joint credit cards, one by one, ensuring that the next time she attempted another extravagant purchase, she'd be met with an unpleasant surprise. The hardest part was keeping up the illusion that nothing had changed. When I finally stepped back into the house, she barely looked up from her phone. "Where were you?" she asked, not even feigning interest. "Work ran late," I lied without hesitation. She didn't press for details. She didn't even care. But soon enough, she would. She never questioned it, not even once. As long as the money kept flowing without interruption, my whereabouts and actions were of no consequence to her. That apathy worked perfectly in my favor. Over the next several weeks, I played my role to perfection, smiling on cue, nodding along to her endless self-centered demands, and upholding the illusion of the dutiful husband she believed me to be. But behind closed doors, I was dismantling every pillar of her comfortable existence. I systematically erased her from my financial world, altering passwords and revoking her access to my accounts. My insurance policies. The beneficiaries were quietly updated. Any asset that could legally be stripped from her control was swiftly removed without raising suspicion. Meanwhile, I began scouting for a new place, something small, something entirely mine. My lawyer was methodical. Together, we drafted divorce papers designed to ensure she walked away with precisely what she had entered the marriage with: nothing. The moment I signed them, an immense weight lifted, one I hadn't even realized I had been carrying. Now, all that remained was selecting the perfect moment to unveil my final move. And I already knew exactly when it would be. That opportunity came sooner than expected. Barely a week after finalizing my plan, she hosted yet another evening with her friends. The same group, the same setting, the same insincere smiles. As always, I played along, greeting them, pouring drinks, maintaining the illusion of the oblivious husband they all dismissed as insignificant. To them, I was merely part of the background, a piece of furniture in my own home. That suited me just fine. Tonight, they were in for a surprise. Midway through dinner, she followed her predictable routine. "We should plan another girls' trip," she mused, swirling the wine in her glass. "Something extravagant this time." One of her friends gasped in delight. "Oh my God, yes! Italy? Or Greece?" another suggested excitedly. Her lips curled into a smirk. "Why not both? After all, I have my personal sponsor right here." She made a lazy gesture in my direction, not even bothering to look at me. That was my cue. Without a word, I reached into my pocket, pulled out an envelope, and placed it in front of her. She frowned. "What's this?" "Open it," I said, leaning back in my chair with deliberate ease. With a flick of her manicured nail, she broke the seal and unfolded the papers inside. At first, confusion flickered across her face as she skimmed the first page. Then her eyes darted to the second, then the third. The mood in the room shifted. A heavy silence descended. Her friends exchanged uncertain glances, waiting for her reaction. When it came, it was sharp and raw. "What the hell is this?" "Divorce papers." My voice was calm as I took a measured sip from my glass. She blinked as though I had spoken in an unfamiliar language. "You're joking." "No," I replied, setting my drink down with finality. "I'm done. You don't need a sponsor anymore. You're on your own." A ripple of discomfort passed through the group. Some of her friends shifted awkwardly, while others discreetly covered their mouths, stifling reactions. The laughter that had filled the air moments before was gone. She flipped through the documents with trembling fingers, her eyes darting over the details that confirmed the inevitable. She had been cut off completely. Locked accounts, untouchable assets, not a single cent left for her to claim. The color drained from her face. You can't do this," she stammered, her voice rising. "You can't just—" "I already have," I interrupted, my tone unwavering. Silence. She turned to her friends for support, but something had shifted. No one was leaping to her defense. In fact, a few seemed to be relishing the spectacle. A smirk here, a slow sip of wine there. Her so-called allies were enjoying the drama. Her gaze snapped back to me, realization dawning. "You knew," she whispered. "You knew all along, and I planned," I corrected her. "Just like you did every time you used me. Just like you bragged about it to them." I gestured around the table. I listened. I learned. Her mouth opened, then closed. Words failed her. A soft chuckle escaped from one of her friends, and another took a leisurely sip of wine, savoring the unraveling of the moment. And then she understood. She wasn't just losing me, she was losing everything. I pushed my chair back, rose to my feet, and adjusted my jacket. "This doormat is done," I said. "Enjoy your dinner." Without another glance, I turned and walked away. I didn't wait for her outburst, didn't look back to see the devastation on her face. It didn't matter. My role in her life had ended. Most of my belongings were already at my new place, and soon the locks on this house would be changed. The financial cords that once bound us had been severed. No more access to my accounts, no credit cards, no safety net. The next day, the calls started. Furious, desperate voicemails packed with demands and accusations flooded my phone. I ignored them all. Then came the texts, veiled threats, pitiful guilt-tripping, every manipulative trick she had ever relied on. None of it worked this time. And then, finally, silence. That was when reality truly hit her. The moment her credit card was declined. The moment she checked our joint account and found it empty. The moment she called the bank only to be informed she had no authority there anymore. The world she had so carefully built on my dime was collapsing beneath her. She turned to her friends, expecting sympathy. She found none. Rather than finding the support she had anticipated, she was met with indifference. The same women who had once cheered her on, laughed beside her, and encouraged her to take advantage of me were suddenly absent. Worse still, they seemed to relish her downfall. Proof of their betrayal reached me soon after. Screenshots of their private conversations, handed to me by someone who clearly wanted me to see what was being said. She really thought she could keep living off him indefinitely. Too hilarious. She got exactly what she deserved. Treated him like dirt, and now she's facing the consequences. If you're going to drain a guy dry, at least don't humiliate him in the process. They had never been true friends. They had simply been waiting for the moment she would stumble, eager to bask in her misfortune. And now that the moment had come, they observed with cruel amusement. In desperation, she reached out to them one by one. Some didn't bother replying at all. Others offered empty words. "I've just got a lot on my plate right now. I need to focus on myself. I hope things get better for you." Hollow excuses, meaningless pleasantries. She was entirely alone. I never saw her in person again, but I heard enough. She had to scale back everything, her lifestyle, her aspirations, even her home. The house she once flaunted was gone. She couldn't afford it. The extravagant vacations, the impulsive shopping sprees, the effortless indulgence, all vanished. At some point, she attempted to reach out to me. The messages came sporadically at first, apologies, explanations, then desperation. "I messed up. I see that now. Can we talk? I don't need money. I just need to understand why you did this. Please. I'm struggling." I read them, and I ignored them. She had made it abundantly clear what I had been to her. Nothing more than a convenience, a resource to be exploited. And now that resource was gone. Ignoring her pleas wasn't difficult. I had emotionally detached long before I handed her the divorce papers. What surprised me was how effortlessly I adjusted to my new reality. For the first time in years, I wasn't constantly exhausted, wasn't carrying the burden of providing for someone who saw me as nothing more than an ATM. I woke up in a space that was my own, a modest yet modern apartment, not excessive, but mine. No furniture picked by someone else, no unnecessary extravagance filling the rooms. Just simplicity, just peace. At first, the silence felt unfamiliar. Not because I missed her, I didn't, but because I had spent so long catering to someone else's expectations that I had forgotten what it was like to live solely for myself. No more checking my bank account with a sinking feeling, wondering how much she had burned through that week. No more unexplained charges for designer bags or overpriced spa treatments. No more relentless demands. For the first time in years, I was in control. I threw myself into my work, not as a distraction, but because I genuinely wanted to. Without the constant tension of walking on eggshells, my focus sharpened. I tackled long-neglected projects, invested in things that actually mattered to me. As my finances stabilized, I permitted myself to enjoy the things I had once sacrificed. I returned to the gym, no longer skipping sessions because I was too drained from managing her chaos. I reconnected with real friends, the ones I had lost touch with because my marriage had consumed so much of my life. One of them, an old college buddy, laughed when I mentioned the divorce. "I always wondered why you stayed," he said. "It was like watching someone try to fill a glass with a hole at the bottom." That line stuck with me, because it was true. I had spent years pouring everything into an endless void. So, I took a trip. Nothing extravagant, just a quiet weekend at a lakeside cabin. No schedules, no obligations, just space to breathe. It was something I had always wanted to do but never had, because she would have dismissed it as too simple, too cheap. But now, I didn't need anyone's approval. Every so often I'd hear about her. She had moved in with a relative, barely clinging to a fraction of the life she had once paraded. The same people who had admired her lavish spending had long since latched onto someone with deeper pockets. But none of that was my concern anymore. I didn't feel resentment. I didn't feel anger. I just felt free. Life carried on. And so did I. Weeks turned into months, and she became little more than a distant memory. I had built a life entirely my own, surrounded by people who genuinely cared, devoting my time to things that truly fulfilled me. No longer wasting money and energy indulging someone else's insatiable appetite for more. But life has a way of bringing things full circle. One evening, I was sitting in a cafe near my office, catching up on emails while waiting for my coffee. Just another ordinary day, until I heard it. Her voice. I didn't look up right away, but I felt it before I saw her. That familiar tension, that carefully measured sweetness in her tone, as if she had rehearsed every word before speaking. When I finally lifted my eyes, there she was, lingering by the counter, hesitant, unsure of whether to approach. She looked different. The designer bags, the expensive jewelry, the meticulously styled hair. Gone. She wasn't in rags, but she wasn't the woman she once pretended to be. No artificial glow of wealth, no smug confidence, just someone who had been humbled by reality. And then, she walked toward me. She welcomed me with a subdued smile, the kind reserved for a familiar face you haven't seen in years. I acknowledged her with a slight tilt of my head, but said nothing. If she assumed this conversation would be easy, she was in for a rude awakening. "I've thought about reaching out so many times," she started, shifting uneasily in her seat. "But I wasn't sure if you'd even want to hear from me." I let the silence stretch, watching her grow more unsettled as she waited for some sign of encouragement. None came. She released a slow breath, as though summoning the nerve to continue. "I just want to say, I was wrong. About everything." I raised an eyebrow, feigning intrigue. "Everything?" Her lips pressed together before she nodded. I treated you horribly. I never really valued what I had until it was gone. A short breath escaped me, not quite laughter, more of an instinctive reaction. Took you long enough. She swallowed hard. I lost it all. The house, the lifestyle, the so-called friends I thought I could count on. A bitter smile flickered across her face. They vanished the moment things got tough. I was naive to believe any of it meant something. I remained silent. What was there to say? I had seen the truth long before she ever did. She hesitated, then inhaled deeply, bracing herself. I miss you, she admitted. I miss what we had. I let her words hang in the air before responding. There was never a we. There was you, and then there was me, the guy paying for everything while you laughed at my expense. She flinched, clearly unprepared for my directness. Maybe she had convinced herself that time had dulled the edges, that I'd be willing to rewrite history and pretend it hadn't been as awful as it was. But I wasn't that person anymore. She reached forward hesitantly, an unspoken plea in the gesture, but I withdrew before she could make contact. I just thought, maybe we could talk, maybe find a way to start fresh. I shook my head. There's nothing left to begin. Her eyes shimmered, tears threatening to fall, but I felt nothing. Whether her emotions were real or just another act, I couldn't say, and I didn't care. She had spent years making me feel like an afterthought, an accessory in her carefully curated life, convinced I would always be there to clean up the mess, to play the role she had assigned me. She had been mistaken. I picked up my coffee, rose to my feet, and spared her one final glance. Take care, I said. Then, just like before, I turned and walked away. This story has come to an end. If someone only values you for what you give, that's not love, that's exploitation. True relationships are built on respect and care, not manipulation and greed. Sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is walk away and choose yourself. Never let anyone treat you as less than you are. You deserve to be valued, not used. If this story inspired you, leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments. Stay strong and remember your worth. What's your opinion? Share it in the comments, my friend. And if you like this story, check out other exciting videos on my channel. I'll say goodbye until the next video. See you. You have to earn me, said the one you thought would be yours forever. Have you ever felt the ground slipping away from under your feet? When the reality you lived in suddenly turns out to be nothing but an illusion? Imagine this. You come home, expecting the usual warmth, but instead, you're met with a challenge. A cold stare, a calm yet ruthless voice. I don't feel the same anymore, but maybe, if you try hard enough. This isn't just a story about love and its collapse. It's a chess game of emotions, where every move is a test of inner strength. Manipulations, silent battles, icy phrases, all hiding one question: who will leave first? Who will break? But what if the one they tried to control simply stops playing? What if he just turns around and walks away? Hello, my friend. I'm so glad you stopped by my channel. If it's your first time here, don't forget to subscribe and like this video, as every like truly inspires me. Please tell me which city and country you watched this video from. Now, let's get started. I can still pinpoint the exact moment my world shifted. That evening felt like any other. I walked through the front door, expecting the usual routine. I'd toss my keys on the counter, loosen my tie, and maybe sink into the couch for a few minutes before deciding what to do about dinner. But something was off. The air inside the house carried an unnatural stillness. Fiona, my wife of 7 years, stood in the kitchen, arms folded across her chest. Her expression was unreadable, not upset, not tearful, just distant. When she finally spoke, her voice was composed, deliberate. We need to talk. That phrase never meant anything good. I let out a slow breath, already preparing myself for whatever was coming. All right, I said, setting my bag down. She took a steady inhale, as if she had rehearsed the next words carefully. Then, Meeting my gaze, she said, "You need to earn my intimacy." I blinked, caught completely off guard. "What?" Her posture didn't change. "You heard me?" A disbelieving chuckle escaped me, but she remained rigid, as if she had just uttered some undeniable truth. "I don't feel the same anymore," she explained. "I don't know if it's me or you, but something is missing, and I don't want to force it." I studied her, trying to decode her words. Missing. What exactly did she mean by that? "You mean—" I shook my head, searching for clarity. "Are you saying affection? Connection? What's gone, Fiona?" "All of it." She hesitated, then added, "I don't feel drawn to you like I once did. But I want to. I just think that if you put in more effort, if you tried harder, maybe we could get it back." Something inside me shifted. Not quite anger, but understanding. She wanted me to prove myself, as if I hadn't already spent years investing everything into this marriage. I searched her face for any hint that this was some kind of test, a joke, anything to make it make sense. But she was resolute. I exhaled sharply. "Let me get this straight," I said, my voice sharper than before. "You're saying I have to prove myself to you? Like I'm competing for a reward?" She shrugged slightly. "It's not about proving anything. It's about making me feel wanted." Wanted. As if I hadn't spent every day showing her exactly that. As if she had ever stopped to consider whether I felt wanted in return. My jaw tightened. I glanced away, forcing myself to remain calm. If I let my frustration show, she'd turn it against me. Instead, I asked, "And what about me? Don't I need to feel wanted too? Or does that not matter?" She sighed, weary. "I don't know, Nathan. I just know I need more." And that was it. This wasn't about us. This wasn't about fixing things. It was about her. I thought back to every compromise, every sacrifice I had made to keep our marriage running smoothly. All the times I'd prioritized her needs over mine. And still, it wasn't enough. Now, suddenly, I had to fight for something I'd assumed was secure. The worst part? She didn't even seem nervous about saying it. I didn't argue that night, not because I agreed, but because I needed time to process. Fiona expected me to chase her. She wanted me to scramble, to jump through hoops to prove I was still worthy of her affection. But instead of reacting, I observed. And immediately, the game began. The first few days, she tested the waters with subtle comments. One morning over coffee, she idly stirred her cup and remarked, "You used to surprise me more." I nodded, saying nothing. That evening, while scrolling through her phone on the couch, she sighed dramatically. "Wow. My coworker Justin just surprised his wife with a weekend getaway. So romantic. Can you imagine?" Bait. I didn't bite. She glanced at me, waiting for some kind of response. An insecure, "Well, I've done nice things for you too," or a guilty, "Maybe I should plan something." But I refused to play. "Cool," I said, eyes on the TV. Her lips pressed into a thin line. That's when she started trying harder. The next phase was visual. She began dressing differently. Tight skirts, full makeup, perfume she hadn't worn in years. At first, I thought she was doing it for herself. But then I noticed how often she lingered in front of the mirror, adjusting her hair, sneaking glances at me, waiting for a reaction. A compliment. A sign that I noticed. But I didn't give her one. I could sense her frustration growing. One evening, as I scrolled through my phone on the couch, she walked past me, deliberately slow, wearing a dress that accentuated every curve. She paused at the hallway mirror, adjusted an earring, flicked her hair over one shoulder. She was waiting for me to look up, to say something, to validate her. I kept my eyes on my phone. She cleared her throat. "I don't know why I even bother looking nice." Without missing a beat, I replied, "Then don't." She hesitated, watching me intently. When I offered nothing in return, not a glance, not a word, she pivoted sharply and walked away. By morning, she had withdrawn into herself. Not distant, not hostile, just waiting. expecting me to falter, to retract the things I hadn't even spoken aloud, to hand her an apology she knew she wasn't owed. But I didn't. And once she realized that, she adjusted. She started arranging her life without me in it. Her plans no longer included my presence. She filled her days with friends, casually name-dropping colleagues, especially the men, like they had naturally come up in conversation. I saw through it immediately. One evening, as I poured a drink, she appeared in the doorway, her heels clicking against the hardwood, a sleek black dress accentuating her frame. Her makeup was sharper, her hair deliberately styled. She moved unhurriedly, reaching for her clutch on the counter, fingers idly grazing the surface. "I might be out late," she remarked, her voice effortlessly indifferent, but her eyes remained locked onto mine, expectant. She wanted me to ask, with who? To react, to frown and say, "Late? Where?" She needed confirmation, proof that it still mattered to me, that she still mattered to me. I took a slow sip of my drink. "All right," I said smoothly. "Enjoy yourself." For the briefest second, her expression faltered. A flicker of something, annoyance, frustration, before she masked it again and strode out the door. And that's when it struck me. This wasn't about us anymore. This was about control. And she was losing hers. The more I disengaged, the more unsettled she became. Her approach shifted, abandoning subtle games for more overt reactions. The offhanded mentions of other men, the veiled allusions to a life beyond us, they disappeared. In their place, a sharper edge took root. The confrontations started small. One night, as she got ready for bed, she turned abruptly and snapped, "You don't even try anymore." I lay on my side, scrolling through my phone. I didn't look up. "Try what?" She gave a short, humorless laugh. "To fix this, to care. Do you even care about us anymore?" Setting my phone aside, I met her eyes. "And what exactly is broken, Fiona?" She hesitated, lips parting, but no words came. Eventually, she exhaled. "I don't know, Nathan. That's the problem." I nodded slowly. "So let me get this straight. You don't even know what's wrong, but I'm the one failing?" Her jaw clenched. Without another word, she turned her back and slipped under the covers. I exhaled, picked up my phone, and let the silence stretch between us. Then, things escalated. One night, she burst through the door, slamming her purse onto the table with enough force that I expected something inside to shatter. I glanced up from my dinner. "Rough night?" Arms folded, she stood rigid. "Do you even realize how late it is?" I glanced at the clock. Nearly midnight. "Yeah," I said, taking another bite. Her eyes narrowed. "And that doesn't bother you?" I swallowed. "Should it?" Silence. Her fingers dug into her arms, her face taut. She was holding something back, something she wanted to say but couldn't. Finally, she exhaled sharply. "You don't care, do you?" I set my fork down, wiped my mouth, and leaned back in my chair. She was waiting for a sign, concern, jealousy, anything that would prove I was still tethered to her. But I had nothing left to give. "You want the truth, Fiona?" My voice was even. She stared at me, unwilling to be the first to speak. "No," I said. "I don't." I watched as her expression shifted. Shock, then disbelief, then something else entirely. Fear. For so long, she had manipulated me into thinking I needed to fight for her. But now, it was her grasp slipping, and she had no idea how to stop it. That night, as we lay in bed, she didn't move. She was tense, motionless. I stared at the ceiling, feeling nothing. No sadness, no anger, not even relief. Just emptiness. And that's when I knew I was done. The next morning, I woke before her. Sitting at the edge of the bed, I listened to her slow, steady breathing. There was nothing left to repair, nothing worth salvaging. The certainty settled over me like a truth I had always known, but never acknowledged. It was over. I went to the kitchen, brewed coffee, and stood by the window, watching the world outside. Behind me, I heard her approach, her footsteps tentative. She lingered before speaking. "Morning. Morning." She poured herself a cup of coffee, casting a glance my way, waiting for me to break the silence. When I didn't, she sighed. "Look, about last night." I turned to face her, cutting her off. "I want a divorce." The words shattered the stillness between us. She blinked. "What?" I took a sip of coffee, letting the moment stretch. Then calmly I repeated, "I want a divorce." A sharp, incredulous laugh escaped her. "You're just upset." But I wasn't. Not anymore. She flicked her wrist dismissively, as though swatting away an insignificant thought. "You'll move on," she murmured. I shook my head. "No, Fiona, I won't." That was when I saw it. Not sadness, not guilt, but fear. A raw, unguarded terror flashed in her eyes. Her grip tightened around the coffee mug as she swallowed hard. "You're serious?" "Yeah," I said, my voice firm. "I am." She studied me for a long moment, as if seeing me clearly for the first time. Then she scoffed, shaking her head. "You're being ridiculous." I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Her gaze flitted around the room, searching for an escape route, for some way to flip the situation to her advantage, the way she always did. But this time, she had nothing. No justifications, no manipulations, no twisted logic to keep me ensnared. Because, for the first time in years, I was no longer playing by her rules. That night, I packed my bags. She sat on the couch, arms folded, watching in silence. No arguments, no pleas, no desperate attempts to stop me. She still believed this was temporary, just another argument that would end with me caving. She assumed, as always, that I'd come back. But she was wrong. When I zipped up the final suitcase and grabbed my keys, I lingered at the door. Some part of me expected her to say something, anything to make this real. But she didn't. She remained there, lips pressed into a firm line, her gaze lowered. I exhaled, turned the knob, and stepped outside. She didn't stop me, and I didn't look back. 2 weeks later, I had my own place. It wasn't extravagant, just a modest apartment, the kind of space that signified a fresh start, but it was mine. No more silent treatment, no more walking on eggshells, no more waiting for someone else to decide if I was worthy of love. At first, the silence felt strange. The space, the autonomy, it all seemed unfamiliar, as if I had to rewire myself to embrace them. I expected regret to creep in, the gnawing sensation that I had abandoned something worth saving. But it never came. Instead, I felt weightless. I felt free. I started reclaiming the pieces of myself I had neglected. The gym, old hobbies, friendships I had let slip away. And then, by chance, I met Mia. There was no calculated effort, no desperate search. It just happened. With her, everything was different. No games, no hidden expectations, no emotional minefields waiting to detonate. It was effortless. It was real. We spent more time together. Coffee dates, long walks, conversations that stretched into the night. I hadn't been looking for something new, but I found it anyway. And then, one evening, as we strolled through the city, hand in hand, sharing quiet laughter, I felt it. A shift in the air, a sharp, piercing gaze cutting through the warmth of the moment. I turned, and there she was, Fiona. She stood frozen on the sidewalk, staring at me as if she'd seen a ghost. For a moment, she didn't move. Then, with slow deliberation, she stepped forward. "Nathan." Her voice was small, uncertain, like she wasn't convinced I was real. I nodded. "Fiona." Her eyes flickered between Mia and me, the realization settling in. "You moved on?" Mia squeezed my hand. I met Fiona's gaze, my voice steady. "Yeah, I have." Her lips parted slightly, her expression stunned, as if she had never once considered the possibility of my happiness without her. her hands curled into fists at her sides. For a second, I thought she might say something, try to bend the moment to her will. But she didn't. Instead, she turned sharply and walked away, her movements stiff, too controlled, like she was barely holding herself together. I watched her disappear into the crowd, and I knew. This wasn't over. That night, the calls started. Then the texts. How could you move on so fast? Did I mean nothing to you? We need to talk, please. I ignored them. Then she found Mia online and sent her a message. Stay away from my husband. I had expected something like this. Desperation always drove her back to me. And sure enough, one night, she showed up at my apartment. Nathan, please, she whispered, tears shimmering in her eyes. I made a mistake. I exhaled slowly. No, Fiona. You made a choice. She shook her head violently. You're my husband. I met her stare, unwavering. Not anymore. She pleaded, sobbed, tried to rewind time and pull me back into the life I had left behind. But none of it mattered. I was done. I'm happy now, Fiona. Don't come here again. Her mouth opened like she had something left to say, but I had nothing left to hear. I took a step back and closed the door. For a moment I stood there, staring at it. But there was no doubt, no second guessing, only certainty. And for the first time in a long time, I was excited about what came next. This story has come to an end. Love is not a one-way game. When a relationship turns into a fight for attention, manipulation, and control, it's no longer love. It's a trap. No one should have to earn the right to be loved. True feelings are built on mutual respect, care, and support, not on tests and challenges. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is not to fight for someone who doesn't appreciate you, but to let go and save yourself. Choose people who see your worth without conditions. Be with those who don't make you prove your love, but simply love you. What's your opinion? Share it in the comments, my friend. And if you like this story, check out other exciting videos on my channel. I'll say goodbye until the next video. See you